everyone, MeanMachineDean here. Hope you are well. Thank you for joining me on this very, very, very special Tuesday evening. It is a Tuesday. Normally I would be doing my Tech and Tuesdays, but not today. Not today, because I have secured some time with a very, very, very special person. He is sat there, as you can see, very patiently. He is also currently in Germany, I believe. So this would now make him the first international guest on the podcast. So yes, James has joined us. So just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We have a hashtag at the bottom left of the screen. I did say bottom right before. I was wrong. It's the bottom left. And if you would like to tweet about the podcast whilst we're live, then make sure you use the hashtag MeanMachineTalks. It will be available on demand on my YouTube channel, and also available at all of the providers shown below behind me on a wonderful projector, which is displayed here. So anyway, without further ado, hi James, how are you?
Hey man, not too bad, not too bad. It's been one of those crazy travel days.
Yeah, I know. So yes, as I said, you are now the first international. Well, I say international guest. You're from the UK, but you are internationally being broadcast here, which I think is fantastic. So thank you, and again, thank you very much for giving me a piece of your time. I absolutely appreciate you giving up your busy schedule, as we're about to go into, to come on the podcast. So yeah, thank you very much.
I had no problem at all, man. I'm happy to do it.
Nah, I appreciate it. So what I normally do with my guests is I normally sort of pass over a virtual mic, which I'll do there. What I normally do is get you to do just a brief introduction to yourself, kind of, who you are, what you do, in a kind of minute or less, if possible. So I will hand it over to you.
Okay. I think the easiest way to do it is I'm a person that gets to travel the world and talk about video games for a living. It's certainly not as easy as what it may sound like. I have a lot of fun doing it. I've been involved in this crazy industry since 2003, first as a player, and then I went into doing like a bit of journalism stuff, and then on camera became a bit more of a thing like we have now on broadcast. And yeah, I just somehow managed to stay involved this entire time, and I never gave up hope that this would become what it is today. And well, it has become what it is today, and I don't think I still really believe how far it's come. It's blown up beyond what any of us could have really imagined in the early days.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point you've raised, because I mean, I when I was younger kind of dabbled with esports and stuff, and it definitely, I mean, from when I don't know how I could describe it, when I first got introduced to esports to what it is now. The promotion, the games, the not this the main point, but the money being invested in some of these tournaments and obviously the games itself has now become so paramount, even to potentially even console launches and game titles. Kind of esports has almost taken a massive influence on everything. So from when I first was involved in it, which was 10, 15, probably plus more years ago, to now, the change has been intense. And I guess you've been probably through all of that, because I just knocked my mind. You've kind of been through all of that because you've kind of been a player, and then obviously gone through and actually now working to hosting and commentating and things like that. So how did you first get into kind of esports? What was kind of the catalyst of all that?
So like I'm a type 1 diabetic. If anyone doesn't know what diabetes is, it's like an illness where your pancreas doesn't work anymore, your body doesn't produce the insulin it needs to. So some people, they might have type 2, which they take tablets, and I have type 1 where you have to inject multiple times a day. It's not as bad as it seems. You get used to it. It's better than being dead, that's for sure.
This is true.
And I basically used to be really active on sport and stuff. I hated football, but I played basketball, rugby. I was very active in martial arts and stuff like that. But when I became diabetic, because you have to manage your blood sugars, which are affected by the things you daily do. So if you're exercising and stuff, your blood sugars will drop down. I wasn't really good at managing at first, because you're obviously learning something very different to your normal life. You can't have sweets and stuff. So it was a learning curve for me, and basically over the 6 weeks holiday, I kind of stayed indoors more. My dad came back with a computer. At first, I just messed around with things like paint and stuff. Like I never had a computer, so I was doing that. Then I found out there was games for it. Then I started some online gaming like RuneScape.
Good choice.
And I started with RuneScape. I did Dungeon Siege, just playing with my local friends from school. And then when I went back to school after the 6 weeks holiday, I ended up kind of having a different change in friends because of my diabetes, out of the kind of jock place, you know, like being on the top of all the sports, because they obviously I was a risk, right? And you have to look at health and safety and stuff like that.
Sure.
So they moved me with like the people who are less able at playing sports, which actually, because it didn't affect me massively, I just had a huge advantage. So I just basically would win everything because I'm with kids who actually, for reasons, might be slightly disabled or something like that, right? So they can't actually participate in the same way.
Sure.
So it was really weird, but then I met a load of really cool people who I probably would have never hung out with before.
Sure.
And they were guys who were heavily into gaming and stuff. And they were like, "Oh, well, we should come play this. You should try this." And I'm thinking, wow, these guys have like opened up a whole new world beyond just some basic games and like playing on my PlayStation. And then one of my friends, Joel and Joshua, I'm still friends with today. They basically talk about Half-Life, talk about Counter-Strike, and this is in the very early days of it all. And I remember my first copy of Counter-Strike, it's going to sound really bad, but like we we were all trying to get as many CD keys as possible. So we would go, we were like, we had our ones that we paid for, the original ones, and then we were trying to like get additional CD keys by like working out what the numbers were.
Yeah.
There was like websites like free serials and stuff like that. So that's how we found Counter-Strike, because we had no money at the time. Good to say, obviously, Steam came out later on, and you can't
Yes.
do that. You can't get away with it anymore.
Yes, it does, and we don't condone piracy.
Exactly. It was a bad decision, but it did get me the game.
Exactly. That's the important thing, and that's has obviously brought you
Yes.
the role that you've got now. So it was worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. I think I put enough money into Counter right now. God, I would
Agreed.
hate to know how much I've spent in CS:GO. But
So-
yeah, that was it. My friends got me into it. I played on a team which was just of us from school friends. We won a local event, so there was 4 LAN centres in the UK at the time. They were all partnered together. They were in different parts. There was one based in Reading. It was called Quarks. The guy that ran it was really awesome. And basically, one thing he asked us to do was like, "Oh, can you compete at this event?" He goes, "You guys are always coming down, but we don't have many teams in Reading." We actually ended up being the team that won the Reading event. Then we went against the best teams from each area, and then we came second, I think it was. And this is going to sound really fucking big-headed, but I'm not trying to be big-headed with it. But like, my friends were good and we were good as a team, but like some of the other players who were playing actual online leagues where we were just playing online, we didn't even really have strategy. We were just playing the game, running places. But they seemed to notice something, this other team. They were like, well, he's a bit better ahead of his other friends. Maybe we can see if he wants to play online and be offered a chance. And these guys, they gave me a huge chance. I played on my first proper team. I was absolutely terrible. So I can aim, I can shoot, I can spray. But it's very different from going where we were just, none of us were in-game leaders, right? There was no such thing as that. There were just 5 friends from school, and you would just go somewhere. We'd be like, "Oh, now let's rush across bridge," if you're playing Aztec back then, which was actually in the map pool, an actively played map. And then we just kind of, we went onto this proper team. You had to follow rules. You had to look at refragging. You had to have someone who was playing certain positions. So while I could play the game, the learning curve was steep. But that's what got me addicted, because I was like, well, I'm good, but now I'm like, how do I go to the next level? And this is what these guys saw, and thankfully they just obviously thought that I would be capable of doing it.
Oh, that's a fantastic story, because I guess that's grassroots level kind of scouting, I guess you could almost call it, if you wanted to compare it to something like football, where they will obviously scout the talent and then obviously try and push them into different leagues. But that's a very interesting story. So obviously you joined the team and stuff, so obviously you must have had quite a successful career with esports. Would that be a correct assumption?
Oh, why am I not hearing you now?
Oh, you're not hearing me. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go.
There we go. No, I was just saying. That's all right. No problems. So apologies for anyone. The internet is a bit sketchy, so just in case anyone's wondering. But So what I was saying is, obviously, you kind of got to that esports level. Was there?
Yeah.
I mean, you must have had quite a successful career when you hit esports. I mean, was it quite a lot of tournaments that you'd won, or? That size says otherwise.
Yeah, it's the problem is, right, it depends what you measure success as, because people obviously would compare it to success of today. Now in the UK, obviously we had 4 Kings, who were the kind of the heavy hitters, the guys at the very top. But the benefit was we had all the open qualifiers. Now 4 Kings would generally always win it, or they'd be invited anyway in the first place. But it gave us a good testing ground. But what we started to find out was a lot of players in the UK were just generally lazy. And so three, I think CS Source came out 2005 or six.
Yeah, I think that's
I don't
right.
like that game. I have no interest in that game. It's not a real version of Counter Strike in my eyes.
I'd
But
agree.
it destroyed the UK scene. And when I say destroy the UK scene, where some countries probably went 50-50 or less, right, went over to Source. I ended up being in a place in the UK where I think 70 to 80% of the best players went over there because
Wow.
and I spoke to him. So I did an interview with Natu on my own channel, and he actually used to play before Kings. We used to play against each other. He's a very famous and successful Counter Strike player. But he was even turning around and saying, like some of our players that we had back on Four Kings, then they were lazy. We weren't even doing that much practice. They were playing poker and stuff like because they were so far ahead of the rest of the UK teams,
Sure.
right? They didn't have to put in as much work. But then they wouldn't actually gain international success. So they were just kind of taking a paycheck and enjoying the ride as it was, which sucks for someone like me who was on the edge to know. But it makes you realize that okay, there was like a gap missing. So when it went to Source, so many people went over that actually I ended up being at one point 15, an in-game leader. I'd had a few lands under my belt and stuff. I'd been traveling, but it was just awful because we had to go. We took three good UK players and then two Danish players. One who is called AJE, and he was MJE's brother. And
Right.
MJE played on the Danish team MTW at the time. Super famous. Played with Zonic, who is now obviously the coach of Astralis. So a very talented player. But because I was lacking so many players that had experience, these were some of our options. You had SGL, you had Enemy Down, you had CSGN, which were all the original leagues. Enemy Down went more to Source. I think they stopped 1.6 support. CSGN ended up dying, and then the SGL is all we had. And everything was now, it was amazing. UK had a lot of success in Source, but again, it was similar to 1.6, where in the early parts, they had success at the beginning, but because of the laziness and the inability of UK players to stick together and form an actual roster and work on it, they would change players too often. We still see it happen today. It became a thing where no one was actually making strides forward. So we do very well at the beginning. Like UK was honestly one of the best teams at Source in terms of we won the CGS championship, won multiple of the big I series events that had all the money from it when even foreign teams were coming over. But we seemed to lack the ability to continue to push forward and improve. And then other people caught up. And that is what really kind of showed me that, okay, this isn't going to go the way I want it to go. Because I'm looking at Heaton and Spawn, who are playing for SK Gaming, the best team in the world at Counter-Strike. And they were the dreams, right? I want to go to those events and be in grand finals against these guys. You've got a goal. You're seeing what they're doing, but these guys are taking it a lot more seriously than what the UK players were. So I realized in around 2006, I was like, okay, I'll give us a little bit more time. I was about to turn 17 in 2007, and then I decided, okay, I'm getting a little bit of money playing this game, not a lot. It was a lot of like products and stuff given, so mice, keyboards and stuff like that. Obviously, the gaming T-shirts and things.
Sure.
But obviously, this is so far back that that's actually it was a pretty good deal at the time. But I knew that okay, I want to go and study. How do I do this part time? So I decided to basically stop playing Counter Strike and then go and play solo. So I'd won some smaller events in UK Counter Strike. I traveled to events in Europe, got absolutely destroyed with my team against actual good teams from all over Europe. But for me, I enjoyed that. Where other UK teams wouldn't put the money in or wouldn't even set their sights on going to an event like that, we're just going to lose. We used it as like, okay, let's go. If we lose, we'll learn from it. We try and gain some experience and push forward. And I think that's very key in anything you do, right? Like you got to take some of the failures with it. But in 2007, I made a decision that I'm going to play Counter-Strike for fun. I'm not going to play it on a professional level. I'm going to focus on going to try and get some studies done. So I went to college and I took on a course that was just it was computer-aided design course just because I felt like I had to do something. And we can get onto that a bit later because I tweeted out an image, obviously after my show on Sky went live, about like what my school life was like and what teachers did. But the main thing is I decided to go to college. I was in college 4 days a week. The rest of the time I dedicated to eSports and fitness. And I would just play solo games. So I was second at the World Cyber Games in the UK for Virtual Fighter 5. I got a silver medal in that. I was within the top three in Europe for Forza 2, which was a racing game. And I applied the same mentality I did to Counter-Strike to these other games to keep me involved in esports in general. And while I was doing that, I thought, okay, well, continue to try and do some content. So I was writing interviews and doing just normal news posts, like doing event coverage for NIP Gaming at the time. I worked for SK Gaming for a few years as well, where I met people like Foreign. He was my boss at one point. I knew that I had a passion for it and I loved what this was. And I just went and said, okay, maybe shit, and it still has a lot of work to do compared to other countries. And I'm really harsh on the UK because I want it to be better, not because I'm negative on it, because I've seen it and it still is in the same spot I left it in 12 years ago almost. Like, yes, there's better opportunities and more money and more events, but the mentality and sadly the way, especially in Counter-Strike, is still a negative thing for the UK scene. But I stuck this and I managed to keep, because I had the vision that I will stay in esports some way. So I always knew I would try, but never thought it would be like a full-time job or anything like that.
Well, I mean, it's fair to say you've certainly got a pedigree behind you. And in fact, there were some things you mentioned there I had no idea about. And yeah, I mean, it's an impressive, a seriously impressive history you've got there. And I think it's quite nice because, I mean, you know, as I said, when I kind of found esports, it was still very much in its infancy, and it hadn't.
Yeah.
It hadn't established itself, and I think that's probably right in what you said. I think you could pick any game, and there wasn't a sense of a community of gaming. It was a community of gamers, and I think that's a big difference. Where having a community around you means that you can kind of have mentors and people to guide you and stuff like that. Whereas if it's just a group of gamers, it's just like, well, you know, it's kind of cool, but you know, whatever.
You mentioned a really good point actually when you say like the kind of mentorship side, because in a lot of other scenes, and I can't say every scene or even the players involved in it, but I know for like in Sweden during the 1.6 era, there would be teams of mixed teams with even some of the best players in the world would join up with 3 or 4 other players who are not as good but very individually talented, and they would mix together regularly. But when we mixed in the UK, you'd have mixes and people would argue, and I'm better than you. But in this, it was like almost a learning culture from the Scandinavian teams, which put them a step ahead again. So that's also a part which kind of again saw us hindered, at least in the Counter-Strike terms.
Yeah, sure. And I think, I mean, I've experienced some of this in the past where there's a lot of ego-ship, and once egos start to get into it, I think that's where the breakdown starts. It really does start at that point.
Big time. Big time. I had a huge ego at one point during this.
Well, understandably, with that repertoire of success, but yeah, I get what you mean.
No, but like as a young kid, right? You think you're doing all this stuff, you're traveling, you're beating people. I was a cocky kid that came from the hood of Reading, and I quickly had to learn that mentality that I've been a part of, the product of the environment I grew up in, is not something to translate well to. Like I said, in school, where I had a different group of friends. I had the friends of the jocks and stuff I'd always been with.
Sure.
And then I met this other gaming community, and they were so different in terms of how these people were and what they did and acted. And I liked both of them, but I had to learn to adapt myself. And it was only a few years ago where I think I really hit a point where I actually wasn't a good person to be around because I was cocky. I was like, well, I've been here for this long. I've done this. Like, I'm owed stuff. And I think that's where my self-reflection and coming back to like my martial arts, and not in terms of fighting, but the mentality of martial arts and the meditation that goes along with it really started to play a factor into actually helping me with that, because I was not the person I would want to be. And you should never be like that. But sometimes when you're so young, these things happen, and it's very strange to explain it all. When you're on TV and you're getting paid money to talk about this stuff, I lost sight kind of who I was as a person. And I think over the last few years, I've managed to grab that back.
No, and I think that's a very good point. Now, every so often there should be some links for James's social media, and I can definitely testify this, and I'm going to explain some of it in a minute. Some of the posts that James puts out is very, very inspirational stuff, and as I said, it's nice to know someone in the gaming industry who hasn't got this overinflated ego, who constantly bigs themselves up, and James has a really nice balance of working in the industry he does, but spends a lot of his time actually nurturing people. I mean, you know, we've spoken a few times over Instagram and stuff like that. And strangely, the first time I actually found of you, and this is going to make you laugh because I'm not sure if you're going to be able to remember this. So there was a Tekken tournament in, I think, Poland, and I'm going to say it was last year.
TWT.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
it. Yeah,
lots.
and
Yeah, yeah.
I remember watching it on Twitch, and then I remember like you were presenting, and I was like, oh, okay, who's this guy? And you looked really familiar, and I was like, I swear I've seen this guy before. Not quite sure, and it was only because I did a bit of research and stuff like that, and I was talking to a few other friends that we're quite mutual with, and he said, yeah, I know James, yeah, this, that, and I thought, I knew it was him. I bloody knew it was him. But as I said, I mean, your posts on Instagram, you know, besides yourself being a family man and, you know, the incredible journeys that you have across the globe, which we'll go into in a moment, it's really nice to see that you're an incredibly level-headed person and that you're out there to almost raise the community up as one rather than just yourself, and I think that is a real testament to yourself, James. So I think you can give yourself a self pat on the back there. But no, it's a real nice thing to see. It's a real nice thing to see, honestly.
Yeah, I think with that, it's like I think the problem is we have so many people now that jump up and they become really famous really quickly in esports, right? So they might be an unknown talent and they break through on a game and everyone loves them. And there's no one to sit there and say how you deal with that. Now, for some of the older guys, they can definitely know that because they came from nothing. But
True.
I was hanging around with Richard and Farin and Sir Scoots and people like Red Eye, and they're all a lot older than me, and I was still so young. So I was very lucky that I had these kind of people around me. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't also ask them for help on it. I asked them for help from a lot of other things, like how to get better at what I'm doing in industry stuff. But that was one thing I never looked at. And I think now what I try to do is I don't want to be, and I'm not going to name anyone, but I see certain talents, and they're so self-obsessed with their likes and their followers and what they need. And what I stopped doing over the last few years was I don't give a fuck about my followers. Like, I know people get hyped because the number of the followers they have, right? I'm not stupid. I understand it's a very, very like prominent point you need to have to solidify yourself. But I've now taken my mindset, and I read this from, I wish it was one of the Bruce Lee philosophy books I was reading. And basically, one of the things is you can focus too much on the smaller details when really like the skill itself is the main point. And so I've always now focused on, okay, I don't want to grow my total by the end of the year. I don't care if this event, because people will literally make a contact, right? So a bit of content, and they won't make the content genuinely because they enjoy it. They'll make the content knowing that I'm going to do this to get this many views. You see this with many YouTubers, and they eventually break down because it's just so much. I now see this in esports talent stuff where they're so desperate, they'll like try and create a friendship and get someone with a bigger amount of followers to help them get followers and stuff like that. I would rather now focus on, I want to be the best host I can be, the best interviewer I can be. If I'm commentating, I want to be able to deliver a standard I'm happy with. But I don't need to sit there and tell people, follow me on Twitter and I'll do this and that. Like, I try and reply to everyone apart from the completely crazy people who like tell me to kill myself and stupid stuff like that. There is some of the there's because most people don't read message requests. I read every message request. I don't give a hell. I don't give a damn who you are, right? I don't care what you're saying. I've seen some shit in my life that it doesn't matter what you say, it's not going to affect me. But one thing I know is I know these people never say it to you directly, and they're just learn themselves how to deal with their own vents of frustration, especially when you're talking about Counter-Strike. Like, we'll make a prediction on the desk, and I'm a host, right? I'm not an analyst. I'm not giving you definitive, yes, you should go with this, but we're sometimes told, oh, make a prediction. You get a prediction wrong, someone's paid the money onto it, and then they message you and they're like, oh, it's all your fault, you owe me this money, blah blah blah. I didn't tell you to bet. I didn't tell you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something that happens all the time in Counter-Strike, and it's funny, but I'm probably one of the few people that just reads all of it, because I've now learned that I only take in the information from people I respect, either in the industry, people who are outside the industry. So I've met a few friends and stuff who have also done acting, or they've worked on TV shows outside of esports, or they're boxing commentators, for example. And I look to them for advice, because that's the next level to me. You have to look outside of it. Obviously, I look up to people like Machine. For me, he is the best host we have in esports, not just Counter-Strike. He is so talented with wordplay and what he does, and I would always look to him and think, oh, that's how I want to do it. Foreign and Richard are two people I look up to in terms of interviews. interviews. The way they put their interviews together is amazing. But I think it's one of those things where side of it, but I try messages because I put out stuff about my depression I had in the past and struggle health. And I've said to anyone that if you message me and you have something that you want to talk about, I will reply. Now I've said that means I have to do it. So I will always try and look for it. And I think that is how, I think that's the difference between the gaming community and esports and anything else in the world, because you can never get that close to people because someone else even manages their social media or something like that.
No, I think that's. I think you've definitely hit the nail on the head. I mean, the last 6 months of my life have been pretty torturous, and it's been the gaming community that's actually helped me, quote unquote, got me back on my feet. And spawned this whole podcast, and that's kind of what the whole premise of this whole thing is. And I bang on about this all the time, but the whole point of this podcast is to give a platform for anybody, to be honest. I know the majority of what I do is kind of games related, but I mean the last guest I had on was kind of like a YouTuber who does film reviews and stuff like that. But again, we learnt a whole lot and spoke about a variety of different subjects, and I think that's a really great trait that you've got, James, is that you have the ability to step away from the desk, as it were, and look at things in a real life way. And again, you're such an approachable guy. I mean, God knows what the first message was I sent you. I can't even remember now. I'm going to go back and go through. I'm a bit worried now. Yeah, I'm going to have to scroll all the way back. But no, again, I mean, you're an incredibly likable person. You're incredibly approachable, and again, as I said, some of your posts are incredibly inspirational. There's been a few times where I've looked through your Instagram stories and thought, this guy's clued up. He knows what is going on in the industry and what affects people and stuff like that. And again, that's a really nice trait that you've got. So as I said, please go and check check. Sorry, someone's just said Dean slipped into someone slipped into your DMs and it's quite a corner. Thank you very much, Trista Bites, for that, for catching me out. And I knew it would be you to bloody do it. But yeah, I mean, as I said, please go and check out James's socials. He really does incredible work. So, and again, he's here. So that's testament to how cool and brilliant an individual is. Thank you, here's an interesting thing. So, as I said on your social media, you spend a lot of your time traveling. For instance, you're in Germany. Yeah. So, how much of your 365-day year is spent traveling on average?
I've never been able to answer this very well because it changes per year. Like last year was probably about 6 months of the year.
Wow.
This year I'm probably looking at like 9 to 10. So we're in August now, right? Nearly the end of August. And I've been home less than 4 weeks in total.
Wow.
Now the benefit is obviously when I go home, I don't have to do normal stuff, right? Like go to a normal 9 to 5 job. I maybe have to tidy up some paperwork stuff and things like that. Spend my entire time with my son. It definitely doesn't make life easy. Relationships are a myth. Friendships, I only have a very close group of friends. But like it was my cousin's wedding, which is taking place at the beginning of September. Can't go to that. I didn't know until recently, obviously, depending on what events and dates and stuff I get booked in for. I've got a holiday booked with my son for a week, which is awesome. That will actually take place. That's happening. I've managed to put enough time.
A holiday?
I've just had like 2 weeks back home. Yeah, I know. A holiday. It's allowed. It's only in the UK. We're not even going that far.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
I think people think traveling's amazing, and it is, because I would never have gone to most countries I've ever been to because of this. When I was a player, it was a lot better because I get knocked out early, and then you play, and then you actually get to explore. When you're talent, when you're talent, you end up going to all these places and maybe seeing a few things. What end up being, they can be 12, 16-hour days. They now 50-50 splitting the days a lot of the time. So even if you're a host, most people have 2 hosts, so you don't have to do the full day on your own, which has been awesome. Like when we were in China, in shift, and then I have the whole afternoon to go and explore Shanghai and chill out and things like that. Well, like their stress in the traveling. Like I'm packed for 3 months now. I know you might be able to see behind me my suitcase. I have two 24 kg suitcases with me for this 3 months. And then I have my backpack and then like a bum bag thing and stuff, like just to try and cram in as much as possible. And also like you obviously create content. I try to create some content on the road and on the go. So I'm bringing extra stuff with me like that. There's a guy, Lucas, in chat. He helps me out with all my tech stuff. He was just helping me get on now, which is why we're late for this, updating everything, because it becomes such a different way of recording or being involved in things, because you go home, everything's set up, you don't touch anything, something breaks every now and again. On a laptop, when you're moving, oh my God.
Yeah, anything can happen on the go.
It's a pain.
No, well,
yeah.
As I said, I mean, I fully appreciate you taking time, because I mean, it's taken us a long time to try and nail down this day. So,
we've tried.
So I'm incredibly grateful that you've even given me a bit of your time. So, I mean, with regards to your travelling, I mean, was there one? Yeah. Was it 1 week where you travelled 3 countries in 1 week? Was I right?
Yeah, it might have been travelled 3 countries in like a few days, less than 1 week. I did ESL 1 Birmingham, and I went to Germany for 1 day. Then I did 1 day in Poland, 2 days in Poland. Sorry. Yeah, and then I went back to Ukraine afterwards.
And I mean, as you do, it's casual. I mean, I remember looking at your Instagram, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm in this place, and then I'm in this place, and I'm going,
yeah."
Has he delayed these posts? And then I'm looking at the time and I'm going, no, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. He's literally doing.
Do you know how stressful that is? That stuff, I can't even think. If you miss 1 flight,
game over.
You know that you're even
no pun intended.
You're not getting that job, and then you're not getting paid, because obviously it's not directly your fault that you've missed it.
Sure.
But if any of those flights or connecting flights are messed up, I was literally leaving work, so finishing on the evening, and then flying in the evening to the next place so I can get up in the morning and go work again. Now, I don't recommend doing it. I am definitely trying to find at the moment, that's one thing I am learning, is like the work-life balance, because I definitely grinded the last 2 years pretty hard to do what I'm doing now. But I also think that I've managed to find a good balance, at least in mental health and fitness with it. But I could just do with slowing things down to take some more time just to chill out every now and again. Like, when we finished the minors here in Berlin before, I took a few days and just went to be able to chill, but I still had to work during that time. But that was quite a nice balance, because we were near somewhat at a beach and things, so that was pretty chill. But it still wasn't relaxing as such. The past 2 weeks, yes, they've been relaxing, but I've had to go see so many people because I'm back home in the UK. Obviously, seeing my son, that's never a problem. We can also do chill stuff, but it's like go catch up with parents, see friends you haven't spoke to in weeks and stuff like that. So yeah, travel, it's great. There's a lot of positives to it, but there's a lot of sacrifice with it. And I think that's one thing that I spoke about this an interview I did with Foreign recently, but a lot of people don't understand that there's quite a lot of negative sides to esports in general, and not so much that anyone really talks about it, though. And I'm not talking about like players not getting paid or invoices being late or something like that. I'm talking about when we have people who don't make it and they sacrifice everything. It happens in football, it happens in every sports, right? But in esports, because it's so new, people just want to say, oh, it's so amazing, paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. But a lot of that is just bullshit being floated around, because people are trying to keep the positive hype because they're seeing it as something. It is getting there, it's growing, it's becoming amazing for a lot of people, but it's still, I know loads of people, loads of talent who are very talented. Some of them, I would definitely say they are better in their roles on certain games than what I am. And yet, because they just don't get the opportunity, for example, or maybe they're not as well known, they're sat there grinding and struggling to find out when the next paycheck is, and having to go and like work a part-time job as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few people I can think of right now, especially in even the Tekken scene, actually, who are incredibly talented, and they just need that one spark to get it going. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a very good point, and it kind of leads on to one of my next questions, which was kind of like off the back of the recent Fortnite tournament. I mean, you know, with having such young people win that tournament with such huge amounts of money, one of my major concerns is that, you know, suddenly parents and kids are suddenly going to jump on this bandwagon and suddenly go, well, if my son can do it, that person can do it, then my son or daughter can go and do that as well, which, you know, is perfectly fine. But I think the problem is like you said, there isn't there isn't that many mentors in those particular areas that I've seen anyway.
Yeah.
So suddenly it becomes this cash cow where people suddenly think, well, if I can chuck enough money into it, maybe my son and daughter can get to that level. And it's quite scary, especially to give, very, very young kids, let's be honest. I mean, I think, the person who won it was 16? What, £1 million?
16, yeah, 16. He won $3 million.
I mean, that's scary amounts of money to give a child of that age. And again, it's the knock-on influence of that. And I guess the question I wanted to ask you was, and it would be interesting to get your view of it. And I don't know if you've done any commentary or hosting on battle royale games, but do you see the battle royale trend starting to teeter off, or do you think it's starting to accelerate? It'd be interesting to get your view on it. As long as it's not too controversial.
No. Mate, I'll say whatever. I'm fine with it.
I like that.
I'm also I'm writing down Lucas said about how he had a question, so I'm just going to copy and paste some of these questions into notepads that we can answer at the end.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind answering these people's questions. That's fine.
Yeah, no problems.
While I'm here, so I'm just taking a few of these down. But yeah, on battle royale. So I was one of the people at the very beginning commentating Fortnite in the early days, and I love what Fortnite's doing. I love where the game's going. I think the money is just incredible. It's insanity. Maybe even too much. Like, I know people say, oh, no, it's not too much money. But, like, maybe if you eke the money out a bit on a longer scale, it could be beneficial. But that's not for me to decide on it. What I do love is that it is life-changing for some of these people now. A kid, 16 years old, earns $3 million. That's insane. Do I think that it's a kind of, you said a fad, right, in terms of what the battle royales are? I think battle royales have a place in the esports scene. I think too many developers jumped on it real quick, had the direct solution. Even look at Apex, which at the moment, if I personally say it, PUBG and Apex are my favorite two in what an esports should be. But I can point out all the flaws definitely in them that Fortnite doesn't have at the moment.
Sure.
And that's because they're not rushed products, but this is such a new landscape. So PUBG, when it first came out, and I do a lot of work on PUBG. I've probably done more PUBG than CS this year, which is wild to say.
Wow. Okay.
And I love the game. So I commentate PUBG Contenders, which is the step up into Pro League. I do that in Ukraine. I'll be starting the phase 3 of that in early September.
Okay.
So I've done basically the whole full season. Then they have there's other big events they have for it all around the world, like the majors they have for their own versions of like what the CSGO major is an example. We did the Asia Invitational at the beginning of the year, Pi. And I think PUBG, when it first came out, had so much hype. It was the number one game. It was no one could knock it off the top spot. But they didn't update it successfully. They had problems where it didn't work with certain people's computers. There was a lot of crashing and certain issues. It was a kind of wild west, and they took too long to solve it.
Yeah.
At this time, Fortnite had come out. Wasn't first person, was third person, but it was accurate. Like, you shit in the shots, and it didn't have planes out. It didn't have mechs like they've got now for Fortnite. So this is talking very early of it, but it had a lot of great fundamentals. But all of these games cocked up on one thing, and including Apex, which still doesn't have it now. They didn't have a good observer mode. So if you want to make a great game, right, and you want to make it an esport game, making a great game, they've all succeeded in that because they're all popular. They all have the great competitiveness in it that you want to get to the end. You want to be that final player. But none of them have good spectator modes. They put so into it, and we get a good vision point of it. Now it's more the observers need to kind of utilize those tools, and also where do we focus when you've got so many teams? Do you just focus on the good teams? Are you looking for the certain fights, stuff like that? Now, when you come to Fortnite, they have to capture every individual player and show his way, and then show some overview shots, and that it looks messy at times. The World Champs certainly looked a lot better than what we've seen in the past, but it's got a long way to go. Apex, they're having pro tournaments now. The interviewer for the very first one at TwitchCon Europe, and we had to capture all of the players direct feeds away.
Yikes.
And that makes it a big issue because end of the day, if it's not enjoyable to watch, Overwatch is proof of that. Overwatch, a huge brand by Blizzard, right? Blizzard have millions of fans and people really buy into the characters and the stories and what they create. But even for me, someone who I enjoy watching that game and I understand that game, at times that's messy to watch. You even have the tools for it where they're so messy, eventually turns off your casual viewers. And although people like me are hardcore of what we're seeing here, If you can't have the casual viewers involved, that's a huge chunk, probably bigger than well, much bigger, like maybe a 60-40, 70-30 split. And that's where these kind of battle royale games out and nail spectator mode, have clean, good fights, doesn't have too much crazy gimmicky stuff and things like that. Then you could be onto a winner. PUBG is definitely leading the charge. Fortnite is the best as an overall, right, in terms of viewership and stuff like that. For me, is the most competitive. Apex is the best playing game, but it's missing out on a lot more, and that's kind of the downside.
It's interesting to get your views on that, actually. I mean, when you said about spectator mode, the first thing that came to my mind, and this sounds really odd to say, but it was almost a bit like the days before Sky TV was on. So football back in the days was really boring to watch. And then Sky kind of came along and just completely wiped the floor. Big cameras, big show, different ways of analysing things. And I think that is exactly the type of thing you're on about. So, I mean, I remember Counter-Strike having a spectator mode since day naught, right? I mean, it had it since the start. So, I think you're absolutely right. It's really surprising that a lot of these other kind of modern, and as you said, battle royale games kind of haven't caught up with the trend of including that. Because after all, if with eSports accelerating and obviously spectators coming on at the same level, if the level of entertainment doesn't match what's going on, that's just going to drop off. And, as good as the entertainment may be, if the actual visual aspect of what people are watching is not of the same level, it's just a horrible experience. And, as I said, I use Sky as a benchmark there because, again, they kind of came in and just completely wiped the slate clean with the way that football was being broadcast around the world, essentially, by adding different tech and different views and different analysing things and stuff like that. So that's interesting to get your view on Battle Royale. And I didn't actually know you were that heavily integrated into it, so it's interesting to get your background information on that. I mean, I guess looking at the amount of money that's being thrown into Fortnite, as I said, I just worry that possibly giving that much money in one stint to someone of that age can almost be like, well, I've won a global tournament. Whether we will see that same person come back for that same tournament again with that level of money, I wouldn't. But that's me, I mean, let's be honest, $3 million in modern day, I mean, it's a lot for most people. It'd probably pay off a good mortgage and get you a couple of nice things. But obviously being 16, moving into kind of inflation and stuff like that, it's still a large amount of money to have in one go. But would you carry on committing into a game playing career with that amount of money that's just been handed to you? Personally, I probably wouldn't, but that's me, my own opinion.
I think it depends, right? Because if a player is incredibly into the actual competitive side of it, the money actually won't matter.
No, absolutely.
What we've seen now is, for example, in Counter-Strike, players have a good salary, they're fighting for the competition, and it's more if they can make their mark in the history and in the game. So for the guy that won it, who was 16 and won the 3 million, he was the first ever to win it, right? He's going to come back and defend his title if he's competitive. Or he could be completely the opposite, like you were saying. He could maybe be looking at that money and think, okay, cool, I'm done with this now. I can now go and invest in houses. I can go and invest in making my whole future financially secure for my friends and family. It depends on where his mindset's at.
Correct.
But also, what he could do is, I guarantee you, he's just won that he's the number one player in the world. He turns stream and he's getting more viewers than most of the big streamers.
You're probably
he can build himself
right.
a whole career out of that as well.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to want to see the best play. And that's where your Tfus and your Shrouds, because they're not so much the most entertaining streamers. You don't watch them for gimmicks and fun. You watch them because they are owning. And they are delivering skills that you might not be able to possess yourself, or something you can learn a thing or two from. So there's many avenues they can go with it. I think the main thing with all this money being thrown around is that there are either the developers, I don't know if it comes for them, but someone who isn't going to be a biased person is able to offer some advice to these people with what to do with their money. Because that's the long-term problem is you earn that kind of money. How many people do we see win the lottery and they spunk it all within a couple of days?
Do you know what? That's a fantastic point. And I always said if randomly, I randomly came into a ridiculous amount of money on the lottery, there's 4 things I would invest in straight away. And that is a fitness instructor, a nutritionist, and an accountant to look after my finances. And the last one is something to do with mental health, because I've seen so many horror stories, especially like this country, the US, globally, where people come into obscene amounts of money and, you know, people approach them. Oh, I've got this business deal. That goes south. Oh, I've invested in this. This goes south. Suddenly, friends and family that you haven't spoken to for 10 years suddenly come out of nowhere and start requesting money. Random, you know, court cases start springing up left, right, and centre accusing you of X, Y, Z. And by the end of the year, like, it's gone. Or you do something stupid, like I think it was one guy who bought he bought a plot of land and started doing like destruction derbies on it or something crazy, and he ended up spunking like £45 million. I'm like, what are you doing, mate? And now he's completely broke, which was just ridiculous. But yeah, I think what I would like to see is maybe more mentors like yourself could be an idea where, you know, it's kind of like a nurturing plan where, you know, I don't want it to sound like a kind of mental support, but almost if you win a tournament, there's almost this kind of eSports support unit that kind of nurture the youth to kind of say, you know, okay, this has happened, but think about your next step. And
the thing is, for me on that is I should have something like that.
Okay.
But I also think organizations also take responsibility. The problem we have with esports at the moment is even some of the biggest organizations in the world, and you can just Google some of the best esports organizations in terms of they've been around for ages, they've got good people behind it, would still be trustworthy because not everyone is maybe vetted correctly or something like that, which means they could then just give advice in the wrong way.
Correct.
So I'm on the other side of the things because I look at it not negatively, but I'm very, very cagey on it because I think I see people going by it in the past when I moved to Germany the first time and I got absolutely screwed over, and I'm someone with years of experience in this, so it's hard to know who's the real and who the fake ones are when it comes to it, and that would be a very interesting way to look at it is how much do these players trust the people they're kind of being supported by. So it's still something that needs to be worked on. And also, like what you said, maybe I was to mentor people, as example, other people with loads of experience. The problem with that is people like us who have been here for a long time are either too busy just trying to keep ourselves afloat and keep growing, or they don't actually have the time at all to put into something like that, even if they would like to. It's an thing and it's something that needs to be worked on. But I think as we start to see more players get personal agents before they sign on to teams and get support like that, and the money is this big, then we'll start to see things kind of clean itself up a little bit.
No, that's a good point, and I think that's, again, it's an area that's obviously going to need to be looked in, but I think it needs buying from, as you said, the developers and obviously the event organisers to kind of almost come together to set a benchmark of what should be right. And I mean, you're quite right. I mean, there are very nice people in this world, and then there are arseholes. So I guess it's vetting the good from the bad, right? And unfortunately, with the amount of money being pumped into esports, there will always be those looking to manipulate, in this case, the youth, and obviously the amount of money that's being pumped in. And the last thing I would want to see is someone come into that sort of money, that kind of fame, and then have it stripped away by someone who was either jealous, eager, or you know, wanted to take an opportunity to ruin this kid's life because of an opportunity that came their way. And that's the thing that scares me the most, is the manipulation is clearly there. And you know, if I was of that age and I was as skilled as that person, then, you know, I mean, I'd hate to think what his inbox looked like the next day. It must have been insane. So here's a contract for this sponsorship. Here's this, here's that, and you know, for his poor parents, I mean, that must have been an interesting night for them anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's as I said, it's an area that's clearly going to need to be looked into from a mentoring point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
So going back into some other things you spoke about, I mean, you said that martial arts was a huge influence on you. So what martial art was it that you actually practiced?
I did Taekwondo for a number of when I was maybe 10 or 11. I had a few, I think I had one silver and one bronze medal in it because I am really competitive and stuff like that.
Hadn't guessed you were competitive at all, no.
Yeah. One was for pattern, was for actually competing and fighting. Also did kickboxing and mixed martial arts for a few years until an injury came up, and it's just not worth doing. And now I'm obviously on camera. It's not ideal to be doing stuff like that. But I think the biggest parts is, I think this is the strongest part in martial arts, and I've only come to appreciate this in the last 4 or 5 years, is the actual philosophy behind it. It's the mentality behind it. Because I always focus on being strong, being the fastest, being able to win in the sparring fights and stuff like that also. But so much more can be applied to your entire life. Just that's not to do with the actual fighting of it. Your mindset, how you approach situations, that is very similar to fighting, but it's just fighting with your mind and with words instead. So yeah, I've done it for a long time, and although I don't train actively now, I'm back in the gym a lot more. But I mean, I I don't think I'd ever have the time because of traveling to go back to class. But I try and practice my kicks. I try and practice my punches still. I do reactions. I practice on wooden dummies and things like that. I think it's a very spiritual and deeper meaning to it, which has certainly helped me overcome a few things, just mentally and not physically, which is incredible.
No, I think martial arts has a, regardless of what you practice, each individual martial art always has the fundamentals of, you know, self-understanding, self-belief, self-discipline, and I think that's a huge one where applying that into anything, whether you're, you know, streaming or, for instance, presenting, or you're an artist, or, you know, whatever your practice, if you're not disciplined and believing in yourself, then, you know, how can you expect to get to the end result? And I think that's kind of the whole battle of martial art, is it's not necessarily the person opposite you, it's the battle within yourself to believe that you can overachieve whatever that goal is. And, you know, again, there's martial arts like Tai Chi where there is no contact, and again, it's very much the dedication and self-practice that leads you to that end goal. And I think the interesting thing is now you've said that, I now start to see the tie-in with some of your posts, some of the inspirational stuff you do, and obviously you do lift very heavy. I also, if you haven't seen James's latest post today, he also travels with an incredibly large amount of nutrition, which was brilliant to see.
That's kind of new though. Yeah, that's kind of new.
I would. Did you get stopped? Did you get stopped at the airport? Is what I want to know.
Mate, I have somehow, like, at one point I was decanting white powder into sandwich bags, and this is white powder of like protein and creatine and all gym supplements. And then someone said to me, they were like, "You do realize that looks like bags of Coke?" And in my mind, it never actually crossed that that's what it looked like. And I was even labeling the bags, and labeling the bags probably made it look worse. But for some reason, I got away. And now I just travel with. Can't see it, but I travel with them actually in their containers. I'm no longer decanting into sandwich bags.
Yeah, I think that's a safe choice.
America or somewhere like that, they'd have me in the back.
Let me in
the country.
Yeah, I think you'd definitely be up for the extra screening if you walk through with sandwich bags full of a white powder. So for anyone who's watching watching live or on demand, please don't carry anything white in sandwich bags. It's the takeaway from anything of tonight, is don't walk around with sandwich bags with white powder in it. But I mean, do you know what? I mean, it's fascinating that you know, for me in my mind, like if I'm going to do something, like go to an event, I kind of think, right, I need my essentials, this, that, and the other. But I think I don't know how you do it. I guess you've done it for so long, you've become accustomed to it. But you're so disciplined in, right, I must have this, I must have that, I must have that. And, you know, obviously your mental wealth being with your nutrition and kind of what you do with the gym. Yeah, I mean, you were in the gym yesterday at like some crazy hour, right? Am I wrong? Was it the night before or something like that?
Yeah, it was like nearly midnight, because I took the day to have time with my son.
Yeah.
And I spent some time with my old man, and it was like 9 p.m. and I could have just said, like, obviously, sod this, just chill and just go to sleep. But I got into the gym at like 11 o'clock at night, and I left near 1 in the morning or something. But I think it's important for me personally. Like, I don't do it to, obviously I've got lifting goals because I like to set myself goals of anything. As I said, go back to being competitive. I'm competitive against myself. I want to be better. And it's what I like. I would even just recommend to people, go to the gym for like 20 to 30 minutes if you're just going to do some cardio or some light weights. It doesn't have to be something crazy heavy or insanely stressful on your body. But I think the positives outweigh all the negatives. So if I will, like, people here after the event, we'll all go for food together or grab a couple of beers or something, right? Because you want to relax after a broadcast.
Sure.
I used to do that all the time. But when I say drinks, we go for like 1 or 2 beers. It's not going to get you messed up. You're not feeling drunk or anything like that. But what I found was, this is not like, it's great to talk with everyone, and I try and do it. But what I've been doing now is, we finished at like 11 o'clock at night. Most people just went for like a bit of food and then bed because it was so late and you have to get up early in the morning. I just decided that I'm still going to go gym. If I have to cut sleep and go gym, I prefer the benefit it has on my body to go to the gym and have less sleep. And I think that comes down to, for me personally, with my diabetes and also my mental well-being, is that if I keep myself going in the gym, that's like my way of getting rid of stress, with getting rid of kind of any negative feelings, of taking out anger if it's one of those days or something like that. It's letting everything out for me to continue on. And also, I'm working on myself. It's another way of improving your body, like I said, like that. And I think with the gym, for me, it's become something a lot more. It's a want to do it. It's a want to test myself, but it gives me such a relief that I can't compare it to anything else. Like, I don't think I'd ever want to stop, because I let myself go not long after my son had been born. My son's nearly 3 now, and about a year and a half ago, he was running in the park. I chased after him. My God, I was one fat, lazy. I was out of breath. Like, with my anxiety, the problems I have is I suffer with excessive sweating, which is called hydrolysis. It's a known condition, especially when you're on broadcast and things. Like, my body will warm up beyond what normal people's would warm up, and I will perspirate more. And that sucks. That's why I wear a lot of Under Armour clothes or a lot of black clothing the whole time. But my way of beating that is, if I find I've gone gym and I've sweat out extra and I've worked harder, that helps me a lot there. But I mean, when I was chasing my son this time, and I used to be able to sprint. Like I said, I'm very active on sports, martial arts. And I was dying after 30 seconds. And I told myself, how am I going to have my son enjoy his life and want to play football with his dad on the park if I'm one of those dads? And you see these dads, and they're an embarrassment. You're not a real dad. If you're having to sit down and watch your son play on his own, or you have to say, no, you want to enjoy all those moments. If you've got a medical condition, obviously, yes, I get it.
Sure.
But if you are someone who is capable of getting yourself in shape, but you don't, and you're sat there, and I see these parents all the time, they'll sit on a bench and they'll just watch their kid and shout at them. I want to be active in his life. I want to be doing stuff with him. And I think that's so important for bonding, like, to show that. And so I just decided that, no, get myself in shape, and I'm going to 100% make sure that when we are playing football, I played football with him the other day. He was the one telling me to go home. He was like, okay, we're going now. Like, I want food. I'd much rather that than be like, oh, no, I can only do this long because I'm literally dying.
No, sure. Well, I mean, as I said, it's testament to your mental strength of how committed you are. And I think, I mean, even listening to that, it's very inspirational stuff. As I said, most of your social posts are driven to make people feel better, to get them off their backside and working harder.
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, you try. No, you do a great job, James, and I think that's, part of the reason why I got you on the podcast wasn't necessarily just to talk about games, but was to talk about you as a person. And that's kind of why I do these podcasts. And every so often, we all need a massive kick out the arse. That's for sure. Anybody who says they didn't is an absolute liar. And as I said, I think the one really interesting thing about yourself is that you always constantly challenge yourself, and regardless of your busy schedule and you're flying from destination to destination, I've always admired the fact that you always get to the gym. Like, it doesn't matter what time it is, and if not, you're out walking about or something like that, and it's just, I mean, it's fantastic, and it's incredibly inspirational to see how committed you are. And again, it's, as you said, it's one of those things where if you set a goal in your head and you're determined to reach it, you'll do anything to get there. And I think that's absolute testament to what you do in your focus and your level. And then obviously, as you said, with the short space of time that you normally get with your son, because obviously you're out and working, obviously you want to maximize that time as much as possible. And I guess that's where you said that kind of bonding is incredibly important. So But no, I mean, as I said, you're an
Exactly.
incredible person. I think your mental strength is exactly what this industry needs, whether it be from the work that you do or whether from a mentoring point of view. Because as you've said, you've been on both sides of the fence. You know, you're incredibly dedicated and you're overall a nice guy, I think. So I think most people would agree with that. So basically, just keep doing what you're doing, mate. I think you're doing a fantastic
Thank
job.
you.
So an interesting question. Have you had any heroes kind of in life, whether it be gaming or someone that you looked up to that was kind of the driving force to kind of keep things going for you? It's an interesting question.
Hmm.
I mean, you touched
I,
on Bruce
I,
Lee earlier, so I was kind of.
yeah. Like I really like Bruce Lee's philosophy of how he looked at things because he kept himself out of a lot of bad situations where he obviously suffered from racism, especially being one of the first actors to come over and be a Chinese person who was obviously on Western films and was getting very popular and was always told, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, or you're not allowed to do something." But he beat a lot of stuff, obviously, through martial arts and through what he was able to showcase. So he was doing things that even like cameras couldn't capture. So he had to slow stuff down, and he had to he had to be able to show the emotion, which a lot of people, when you were looking at older martial, wasn't able to be done. He was very unique in that sense. But I admire his whole journey up until obviously his early death, which is still a kind of a mystery, but also a massive shame in that sense. I'd say my dad and both my dad and my stepdad for different reasons. So my dad, he's a Londoner. He comes from literally nothing, council house background, and just worked. So him for me is like a hero in terms of no matter what shit the job was or how good it was, every day he would get up and go to work. There was no excuses. He knew he had to provide for the family. So I think I get that kind of drive. And then my stepdad is a Jamaican who grew up in Manchester during a very racist time and then moved down south. He's now with my mum and he has beaten all the odds in terms of he is working at a very international company and they're literally all over the world. He's one of the top managers there, and yet he multiple times has been told because of his face, because of the color of his skin, that you won't get any further. You like even when he was I was at secondary school, and they would blame things like if I was bad at school. Oh well, he's his stepdad's at home because obviously he's a black person and we're in a very white area. That maybe he is the reason why I'm misbehaving or he is teaching. Yeah, he is probably more successful than most of the parents there in terms of what he's been able to do on a work basis, but also he's very emotionally understanding and would never allow his anger to take over, which is why he's been able to hold these positions because he's been able to deal with all the rubbish that's come with it. I think in terms of gaming heroes, I've always known, which is Abdi. He's a super famous 1.6 player. Gaming, and I met him in 2005. We've been friends ever since. We've worked at Zowie together. We have a lot of things in common, and I just respect him for being one of the first black gamers out there. Someone who kind of jumped over a lot of hoops to be into the position he's in, but also now he's working with kids who are being rehabilitated. They're coming from like war-torn countries and living in Sweden, and he is such a positive, happy guy the whole time, and yet he could have been negative at multiple times throughout his career, throughout his life, because of things that were going on around him, and he never let it bog him down. I'm trying to think about like it's so hard because I more than like look at hero direct inspiration. I look at more of what people have done that I take the positives from. Look at like certain parts because I don't think there's ever one complete perfect person. I don't actually like even when people talk about relationships. Go, oh, he's perfect for me, she's perfect for me. Like that's all bullshit because there's no such thing as a perfect person. You might be able to become some person with another person because they make you better, but perfection is something that everyone strives for, especially with how dumb everyone is on social media as an example, and they buy into all of this like this absolute lying facade of like, oh, my life is so perfect. Watch me, because they're never talking about anything negative. And I think that's always the big problems in there. Actually, Wookie's helping me out here. Like, if you look at Foreign and Richard, starting with Foreign was my boss at SK Gaming. He was the first person that encouraged me to get behind a video camera. And when I say get behind a video camera, this was filming, pointing at the person I'm filming, and just talking from behind it without my face there, because I didn't want to be seen at the time. Then obviously we went further. I worked with Richard loads. I got to see Richard go through some of his early like big journalism stories and things like that he was bringing up. He was working at Cadre at the time, and I became friends with him when he was covering events. He was just a straight up guy, but he was also down to earth and spoke a lot of sense. So those guys, especially on a career side of things, I probably would not be here without either of them in many ways. So yeah, less about the hero side of things, but more about what people have been able to kind of put into me that's still here now. Because I think you should always listen to everyone's advice they give you. You just don't have to take it. Like people take advice so literal now, but like I can listen to everything you could tell me from your perspective of how to be the best commentator, and it doesn't make you wrong. But if I don't agree with it, I just don't have to take it on board. And that's where people are so stupid now, because in their minds, they sit there and say, agree with that, so it's wrong. Well, no, it's just wrong for you. Like, what that happens, what I might advise work for everyone, but it will work for some of them. And I have this conversation around legal, like CBD oil and stuff like that. Some people literally think it's like, oh, it's the devil, it's a drug, it's a gateway drug, blah, 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 whatever else. And that's fine if that's the way they think about it. I'm not saying they're wrong, but like, you can't put down people who use it and find positive effects in it.
Agreed.
And I think that's an outlook a lot of people don't seem to kind of grasp, is that all advice is worthwhile, but you're in control of what you take and how much you use from that advice. So yeah, I've kind of put a spin on your question.
to be fair, if they can take CBD and get it into a gateway way, then they clearly would God, yeah. They would really enjoy ayahuasca. Anyway, on that note, on that note, so one question I really wanted to ask you is, where's the craziest place you've travelled to do your job?
Oh, probably Abu Dhabi last year.
Ooh.
That was insane. That dude, that's like, it was an awesome country.
Hang on. I remember this, because you had some insane hotel room, right? yeah, I remember this.
Lost Island race course. Sadakis was probably the most jealous he's ever been of an event he didn't do, because it was literally on the F1 track. And they looked after us really well. But like I told you about my sweating. When it's 40 degrees, just normal, just you literally stood there. And you're having to wear a shirt and jeans. So luckily I was hosting, I'm on the desk. I was wearing a full suit jacket, shirt, then a vest underneath to try and absorb as much of the sweat as possible, and then just shorts underneath. But like, that event was the craziest, because these people have never had an event like that for Counter-Strike. They were trying so many new things. They have a lot of money, and they pulled it off very well in the end. But like, it was a huge learning curve for them. But like, I wasn't used to that weather. I used to a production company that had maybe not experienced this much esports. They were trying a lot of new stuff. We ended up advising them. But it was just such a crazy fun event, because we got paid for the full event, but we only worked one day. We spent 3 days by the swimming pool, drinking all day and getting suntanned. The games were still playing, but we couldn't actually broadcast at the time. So we were just checking. The players kept coming back to us, and they're like, for once, you guys have the easiest job. Now it's on the other foot, lads. Because obviously players, if they're not knocked out of the tournament, they're still in, so they're still focused. But like, for us, in few days, then you work just the finals day, and we could just watch everything happen. So the players this time was, by the way, when I'm talking, because I saw Wookie put 80 degrees, 40 degrees, I'm talking about 40 degrees C.
Yeah.
Not Fahrenheit.
Yeah, not Fahrenheit. No, we're talking about hot weather.
Yeah. And like, when I was speaking to some of these, they were saying during their summer, because this was winter, I think we were here in early December, in their summers, it's temperature where you just don't go outside. Like, they only go out in the evening. And I was just, wow, what the hell? But there's so much cool stuff that we traveled down to Dubai on the last day. Went to a few malls there and stuff. It's just such a country that is different to anything else I've ever been to. It was kind of like experience Asia for me. And I was really into that.
Yeah, I mean, the weather there is just insane. I mean, I've never been that far Middle East. I mean, I'm half Egyptian myself, and
Mm.
I mean, I've been in.
Okay.
I think my brothers might be still be in chat. I think we were in like 42 degrees, and it got to the point where, as you're walking on the tarmac, you can feel it giving under your foot, and you're just like, no one should be in this weather. This is insane. And then, like, you switch on the TV, and it's like, Dubai, the weather is 50 degrees. I'm like, yeah, that's totally normal, isn't it? Yeah, totally normal. You just fry an egg outside. Yeah, that's definitely where you want to be. But I just don't know how people deal with that. And again, like, you know, to do your job fully suited. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
there was some of the guys that come to work taking pictures of us. Obviously, everyone on stream just thinks we look all professionals. How there we are, just shorts underneath. And I was laughing away, but it's really cool fans there as well because obviously they've never had too many. Like, there's been one event in Dubai with CS before that in 2015, but they hadn't had the players, they hadn't had us guys there, so it was it was a great experience. I hope they do another event out there, and if they can make it so you work for the full 4 days, I think they could do a really good job. Because, like I said, money in the Middle East and what they had to invest in, it was no joke. It was a big production put on. They had a team of people that had done concerts for like Post Malone and stuff over in Dubai. They had a full crew ready for it. It was just learning the esports.
They're certainly not messing around. And I mean, it's funny.
Yeah, no.
It's funny because where I work, which I'm not going to disclose, but you know, we've invested a lot of money into the Middle East, and it's amazing to see the gaming scene has sort of risen slowly, and it's really started to ramp up. And I don't know if it's the battle royale thing driving that, but there seems to be some crazy amount of especially teams actually around gaming seem to have picked up, especially CS:GO. I think World of Tanks and I think PUBG is kind of really accelerated out there at a crazy rate. So I don't know if there is a lot of I don't want to use the word foreign influence, but for the better term I will, foreign influence sort of going in to bring esports to that region. Probably similar to how F1 obviously kind of went in and did the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years how that kind of takes off with esports.
No, I think they've got a bright future in terms of investing, and they're good out. When you're speaking to the people, they have plenty of like LAN cafes as well to go to.
Yeah,
I think it's the general people that live there who don't have tons of the Middle Eastern money, and their parents just normal. Then getting hold of actual having PCs that can play the games. I think that's more what it comes down to.
No, exactly. Accessibility to a gaming rig that gives you a, what's the word I'm thinking of? An optimal gaming experience where you can compete is probably one of those things. And that's the same thing. I mean, obviously, as technology advances, that becomes more affordable and people can start gaming at a level where you can start to compete, which is obviously where consoles probably have somewhat of an advantage because obviously everyone's on a similar playing field, whereas on PCs, you can build and customize to however you want, with GPUs being kind of the main driver behind most of that. So
we saw that in Tekken, right? We had the pack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still stunned that we're looking at a double Evo Tekken champion from Pakistan. I mean, that was just stunning. But I tell you what, that is one scene. The fighting game community, hands down, is one of the greatest communities ever, where you can take people from a multitude of different backgrounds and throw them all together in one room, and they will all just get on. No bitching. I mean, there'll be a little bit, but there'll be no bitching for the most part. Everybody gets on. Everybody, you know, there's so much mentoring. There's so much camaraderie, teaching, investment into each other, especially in that scene. And you know, with some of the guys that I know, it's just fantastic to even be among it. And the strange thing is when I watch the Tekken streams, especially for the World Tours, you start to pick that up, because especially when it starts to get to like the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the finals, you can hear it in the crowd. Like, everybody is involved. Like, everybody's in there. And it's a fantastic
I'd love
witness.
it if they had something like a major. If they had something like the majors, right, where Capcom Cup, they've got Evos and the venue. But I'd love to see like one massive event, which is like the $1 million kind of Tekken or Street Fighter or whatever game it needs to be event, and see how much that brings. Like you're saying, they are an incredibly passionate community, and they really do give it everything.
Yeah, and it's honestly like you've only got to watch any Evo final of any beat 'em up of any year. Like you can go back to Evo like 2006, like years and years and years ago, and you can hear just the amount of passion. And this is people who have been knocked out by the people who were in it and stuff like that. Like there's no ego at all. Just everybody's involved, and it makes a massive difference to see everybody committed and together as one. So since we were talking about kind of games, as you can see, I asked you yesterday what your favourite retro game was, and in the background we have Tekken 2, which is a fantastic choice.
Hell yeah!
I perfectly agree with that. So going into retro, which for most people in chat will know is one of my favourite areas. I do stream a lot of retro, and I have quite an extensive collection. So, what's your first gaming memory?
Ooh, first gaming memory.
Yes, we go in with the power punches now. There we go. We're getting to the good stuff.
Mine is between Sonic and Echo the Dolphin.
Ooh.
And also, do you remember on the SNES, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Heroes?
I certainly do.
Turtles game.
I certainly do.
Yeah, dude, that was so good as a platformer because that was like, that reminded me of kind of Streets of Rage, but like a one that was more from the TV show, right, when it was getting popular.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was becoming a big deal. So yeah, that's probably my earliest memories.
Right.
I remember Echo the Dolphin being really fun. I remember Sonic being good but hard when it got towards the end. And I remember the Turtles game being the best friends fun, like if there was a couple of you playing.
So here's a question for you: which version of the Mega Drive did you have?
Mm-hmm. Which
version of the Mega Drive did you own?
Oh, I've had the I even a collector of consoles, but my first one was the 16-bit Sega Mega Drive, the original one. My dad had
It had the volume slider on it, right?
Yeah,
right, okay.
yeah.
So that's a Mark 1. So that's made me somewhat a little bit sad, but it's fine. It's fine. We won't go into it because everybody knows that the Mega Drive 2 was better, but it's fine.
I still own the so I have a copy of the Mega Drive 2. I have the Sega Saturn. I have the Game Boy, the original Game Boy,
Nice.
The Colors, the Advance. I don't have. I've got one SNES. I don't have the NES. What else have I got? I got one of the ones that had come with the first with the guns you could actually get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, it was like they had duck hunting and stuff.
There we go.
Yeah, I've got tons. I've got a GameCube, a Dreamcast. I've got PS1, 2, 3, 4.
Christ,
I'm
starting to worry here. I'm now going, what have I got that you haven't? I'm sitting there going, Christ, hang on. He's starting to outdo me, right? No, it's all cancelled, right? Yeah, podcast over, right?
I got really lucky, dude. There was a guy in Reading who had 2 twins. So not just one pair of twins, like 2 pair of twins, and they were all boys.
Oh.
And he had them at separate times. And basically, because there were so many arguments for his family, they ended up buying 2 of each console. So when they got older, he asked what they wanted to do with it, and he started selling them. So I basically went to his house, and I said, look, if you sell me these ones now, I said, if you give me a bit more time till I get paid or I can make some more money, I will buy everything. So I basically just bought everything he had left.
Now that is a cool story. I like that. That is good. That is very good.
Yeah, I've been lucky because he even had games for it. So I was picking up as much as possible. The only thing I didn't manage to get my hand didn't have a cable for it. I think it was because he had the Master System, so I had that. I think it was the Sega Saturn for it.
Yeah. I mean the Saturn. I mean I've got 2 of these kicking around somewhere around behind me. But yeah, I mean the Saturn was a brilliant console, but again it was just one of those ones, as I always say, where Sony just came along and went, PlayStation, slap, good night, and that was it. And it was
that was the same for Dreamcast as well. Dreamcast had internet before anyone had internet.
This is true. And funny enough,
Dreamcast was the one.
My other Dreamcast, you can't quite see it, is actually just sat just down there. You can just kind of see it white, just peeking out. It's all right, darling. It's all right. You can stay there sleeping. It's
little people that you can put inside it.
Yeah. But that one actually down there, I've actually modded, so it's actually got an SD card slot in it. So so I no longer need discs, which is fantastic because I hate opening
brilliant.
that bloody drawer. Taking games out is an absolute pain in the backside. So yes, it's been heavily modified, and also I've changed the fan in it, so when you turn it on, it doesn't sound like a hovercraft, which is really useful.
Yes.
So for those late night gaming, when you want to turn it on and be quiet, and it doesn't go "Arr!" in your ear. So it's nice to have a console that's been modernised, as it were. So okay, so you obviously had quite an extensive collection of retro kind of growing up. Was there one particular game that stands out in your mind that you always used to commit to and play? And it could be non-retro, it could be a PC game. Was it one thing that kind of made you say, right, gaming is awesome. This is the one thing I'm going to be dedicated for?
Ooh, I put a lot of time into Final Fantasy VII, and a lot of people did at that time. I didn't end up completing 7 until I was a bit older, but 8 I went through with. Metal Gear Solid, the first one, right?
Now we're talking.
I didn't have the copy, so I played the demo for something stupid like I must have 50 hours gameplay of playing the same shit on the demo. Because basically, you get to the point where you first get a box, and you could obviously annoy the guards with the box, but it would get to the point before you go out and have to face the tank, one of the first bosses.
Yep.
So you go through a bit where it goes through the water, goes up the elevator, and all that stuff. And I must have played that over and over because my parents would not buy me the game. And then when I finally got the game, that was it. I was like, even the bits where you had to, is it Psycho Mantis? You have to take the controller out and plug it into the other side. Dude, that was so, like, for me, that's probably groundbreaking because I'd played loads of games before it. But I mean, this was tactical. It had the act. It was the story. Like, Final Fantasy, it had story, and like I think for me, I know people say they love Final Fantasy 7. I think it's a great game, but for 8, the story on 8 was like the love story. It was incredible. But for Metal Gear Solid, it had everything I wanted because it had the action, had the gun, and the story was so perfect. And once you played that demo as much as I had, and I played it beyond belief, like I'm surprised the disc didn't burn out. When I got the real game, my life was over. I did the full completion. I got the bandana. I got the stealth. So you had the unlimited ammo. Yeah. I continued to play through it all. And I really wanted to do this because I just bought the newest ones. I want to go through and start at the beginning and play every single one and go through all of it again because I watched someone streaming. Really bad. I don't remember the guy's name. A very small streamer. He had like 5 viewers. Me and him were having a conversation about the original Metal Gear. And he was the one who kind of inspired me to just go back and play through all of it. Because he goes, I hadn't played it for like 4 years. And he said it was like almost tears of emotions were coming out of him. I reckon I'd probably feel that from it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. And it's a little bit pathetic to admit, actually. But I can't bring myself to finish Metal Gear 5 because my childhood is basically so invested in Metal Gear, and I've played them all. It was funny because I started playing it again the other day, and I was like, I've got a little bit closer to the end. And it's like I know.
Is that it's not Ground Zero?
No, it's I forgot what it's called now. Phantom Pain. Ground Zeroes was the weird demo thing they released beforehand, but yeah, so I can't.
Played Ground Zero. I haven't played Phantom.
Yeah, I just can't bring myself to do it. I know I'm going to have to brattle up the courage to actually do it and actually finish it and kind of put the final nail in the coffin and say, right, it's done. But I can't bloody bring myself to do it, and it's infuriating because everyone's like, oh, you haven't seen it. I'm like, I don't want it to end. It's my bloody childhood, but no, it's. I mean, I absolutely agree. Metal Gear 1 was just stunning. Just really, like you said, really small bits. Like to beat a boss, you unplug a control pad and put it in another port.
Yeah.
What? The bit with Psycho Mantis, if you had...
I didn't get that for 8 years.
No, everybody got stuck, don't worry.
I was so... No, the thing is, you had no Google and stuff.
Exactly.
Direct answers, right? So, like, what we were dealing with was you would have to find out from someone or someone knew how it would all work out and stuff. Oh, I just dropped my phone on the floor.
That's right.
But you had they've released this other one. I bought this off Steam. I'm not sure about it yet. I don't know if anyone's played it. It's called Metal Gear Survive, and it's like a zombie survival thing.
Yeah,
it's at the end of Ground Zero. You're some random person. It's not very tactical, but it's still got slight elements of Metal Gear. Now, it's completely negatively reviewed, but I'm not sure it's just a fanboy of the series of me that makes me want to keep. It definitely doesn't feel like Metal Gear, but it's an interesting one. I don't know, like I'm on the fence of it. I might continue playing it, or I might just go. Maybe I should return it to Steam.
There was a couple of really random ones they released. I mean, there was the Metal Gear Rising Vengeance, is that right? The one where you play just as Raiden, and like it's mental because you can have like a missile come at you and just chop it up into 1,000 pieces, which is really cool. But the game is just like the problem is like when you get a game series like that, you in your mind you're like, okay, it's Metal Gear, you do this and this and this and this, and you creep around and you shoot people and you choke them out and you get in a box and do all cool things, and then all of a sudden it's like, let's get Metal Gear, give it some LSD. Set the gas mark to 12 and just put your foot to the floor, and it's like, this is insane. But yeah, I mean it's a very different take on Metal Gear, but that's another game I need to go around and finish actually, but it is absolutely mental.
See, you're getting me really excited to go and play.
It's getting pumped, see?
Yeah, when we went to Sun Liberty, right, I was a bit annoyed at first because obviously you went Snake at the very beginning and how that worked out, but that ended up being okay, not too bad. And obviously, it looked really good. That became crazy. I remember Snake Eater, I never actually finished. And then Rising, I've not played. So there's a lot I've still got to experience of it to kind of go through all of it. But I think when I go through the first, that will spur me on to do all of them in one go.
Yeah, but Snake Eater was hilarious for me because I didn't actually like it to start with, and then I was like, Dean, it's Metal Gear, you need to play it. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I started playing it, and then this.
It's the way you can change all your colours, can't you? As well.
Yeah,
that's. You have,
and you can set traps to catch animals and stuff like that. But the hilarity of it was all the little nuances that I didn't know until years later. So, for instance, there's one bit, and I didn't want to spoil it too much. There's one bit where you have an option to kill a boss later on in the game, but you can actually do it earlier. And I took the shot and did it, and I didn't realise. I was just like, okay, whatever. And it was only until later. It was like, oh, if you take the shot here, you end up killing the person. I was like, oh, so you actually are meant to fight the oh, that's unique. Or the other one to defeat said person is you go into your, I think, PS3 at the time. You set the date, I think, like 10 years ahead of what the current date was, and then basically the person dies of old age. And I was like,
What?
I was like, hang on a minute, guys. What's
That's
this? Yeah, I was like, hang on a minute. This is getting a bit out of hand. But yeah, I mean, there's so many little things that people are discovering, even till now, that were completely omitted that people had no idea about, which I just think is hilarious. And that's part of the charm of the game, is that every single one had its callbacks to the original. It had little nuances. Like, I mean, who would have thought of putting the date forward on the bloody internal clock on a console to defeat a boss?
Oh, never.
What?
Never. The only time I've done that is when you're trying to crack software or something. And you want to get the 30 days a little bit long. Windows back. I would have never done it for a game.
Oh, those good days. We don't condone piracy, but yeah, yes, those days were great. Those days were great. We've all done it. Anybody who says there isn't is a bloody liar. Okay. But no, I mean it's nice to hear your retro gaming memories, and that's a nice thing that I like to sort of end the podcast with, because I think nostalgia is always a great thing, and it's part of the reason why I try and keep the retro thing going, is that, you know, so as great as future technology is and the stuff that's coming out is brilliant, it's always nice to go back and look. And I mean, even though I was actually looking at Tekken 2 earlier when I fired it up, and I was like, it still looks like a great game. I mean, obviously it's a little bit slower than the current Tekkens, but it's still such a great game, to play even now. And it just shows that I think probably retro more than ever is probably really on the rise again, and it's nice to see that.
Definitely.
And it's nice to see that. There's a lot of people out there looking to preserve those things as well, rather than just letting it fade away. Which, you know, for certain industries, I mean, you could say the same about the car industry. Lots of people take older vehicles and obviously preserve them and stuff like that.
Yep.
But it's nice to see that obviously in the games industry the same thing is happening as well. And I guess in these four walls I'm trying to preserve a small amount of retro gaming in the world. So right.
No, I'm doing the same. I want to be able to play some of these with my son as well, so he can actually see where it's gone. Like even now, right, we're talking about Counter-Strike 1.6. I still play that like a lot. Like I still play a lot of 1.6 because there's loads of like on. And what I do is, because I'm definitely better still at 1.6 than Go, despite how much time I put into Go. I've got the basics down in Go, but I fall into old habits. But sometimes I'll just go on a server. If they got the admin on there, I'm like, okay, all of you go on one side and I'll just be on CT or T just on my own, and let's have some fun. And like, I still feel the same feeling when I play 1.6 of like nostalgia, but also epic moments, and it brings back a lot of like memories. And I also feel better when I get kills at 6 than I do when I play Go.
Do you know what I mean? I remember putting hours in 1.6, and it's funny you said, because I remember when Source came out and I tried to make the jump myself, and I was just like, it just doesn't feel the same, you know. And the same.
It got better. It honestly got better. Same as you, is that like when it first came out, I was like, nope, this is not Counter-Strike. This is terrible. And then when things started to improve, and they obviously you had the it was almost like a pro bot or something they made to kind of improve the fundamentals, a Z board or something.
Yeah.
I don't quote the names, but there was stuff created that did make it better. It became a more well-rounded game, but the damage had already been done, and they nearly made that mistake with Global Offensive. I interviewed Neo, who was the best player in 1.6 at the time, and he, before moving over to Go, in the interview I did with him at Intel Extreme Masters in 2010 or 11, I want to say, he turned around and said, I would rather play League of Legends than this crappy game.
Wow.
And that was like the best player in the world. Go hadn't even come out yet. They were just that annoyed with how terrible.
Yikes! That's certainly a kick, isn't it? I mean, that's a strong statement to come out with something like that. Yikes! Right. Well, I think that's probably a good segue, because I think you mentioned there was a couple of questions that were dropped into chat, wasn't there?
Yes. Yeah. So Lucas said, first of all, he said, how to relax or chill in locations you're unused to, and is it tough traveling alone so much of the year? I think it's definitely tough traveling alone, to start on that point, because like, yes, you're around other talent and stuff, but like for me, I'm not part of the very top of CS, right? So the guys that always travel together, and they certainly, or like a good relationship, and we're all friends, like everyone's still really nice, but you're definitely not in the same boat as what they are with people. So for some of us who are like not always on the big events, there's at times where you feel definitely a bit alone like that. But I think overall, because you're around so many people and you're also working on a broadcast, that helps with it. And generally, when you finish a day, you're pretty tired. To relax or chill, we're lucky now that we're getting to more events where they're in the same location every year, so you get to know the area. Like the place right now, I know a nice Korean bar. I know another place where I can get just good snack food and stuff in general. So that's cool. For me, I like to have home comforts as much as possible. And obviously, in a hotel room, that's not that easy. But that's again why I travel with so much stuff like the CBD oil, taking certain food, snacks, and things with me, trying to keep things as consistent as possible. And that's another benefit of gym. If you're really tired, but you can't sleep because you're in a place I think everyone's probably had it where you feel tired, you want to sleep, but you can't. Then going to the gym just for a little bit, tiring yourself out a bit more, can work, can help.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, I've done some travelling in my past, and I absolutely agree. In fact, the last time I went to the US, which was 5 years ago, something like that, I remember I landed, I think I took off here at about 7 a.m. I landed there for about 3 p.m. I then went full clip in the gym, and then slept the entire next day, and then paid the price when I walked through the office door, and they were like, "Hey, pancakes!" I'm like, "Oh," and as we know, the US don't do half measures. I mean, pancakes become pancakes, right? So with all the sides, so you can imagine it ended pretty badly. US hospitality is definitely something to be appreciated. That's for sure.
Oh yes, definitely so. Portions are larger than.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to describe it.
The Tristabyte said, "Is eSports a new child beauty pageants issue?" Huh? I don't even know what child beauty pageants issues are.
I think probably what she's probably insinuating is probably something like, is it becoming a probably something like it's
because you said parent.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. So honestly, I had a parent come to me through a family friend because they knew of what I did, and they, bear in mind, I'm not a professional at Fortnite. I can play the game, but I'm not very good at building. I can shoot things. I've got it, and it's learning for me. They were like, "Oh, you do this stuff. I want to pay you to teach my son to be a pro." It doesn't really work like that. Like, you can get coaches, sure, but like, first of all, not my game, definitely not going to do it. But also, he needs to be like to a certain level himself first, and not just between his friends, because I think that's the main thing for parents is they obviously their son's saying, or sorry, their son or daughter could be saying that they're very good, they're going to be the next best thing, and yes, they're better than all their friends. But how are you on a more local level, right? So how are you in your country? Then how are you against the rest of the world? I think that's what it comes down. And I think some parents now they might want to try and push them down there because they're seeing all the money and stuff, like they've done with football, like they've probably done with these beauty pageants that were mentioned by Trista. I think you have to be very cautious on that because there are people who used. There was a guide, I think it was even on Amazon, that's eventually been taken down, but it's like how to be the best player in Fortnite and stuff like that. These people quickly throw up and sell on Kindle for like $5, and
Wow.
they sell hundreds of thousands of them really because people started to see the money and the parents push them down this way. And I said this is good kind of on this. My son is 3. I was a pro. He's been around esports his entire life in gaming, but I'm never going to go to him. You must sit there and play games. Now, obviously, when I'm playing on my computer, he wants to sit on me, wants to watch stuff. He likes to play with the mouse and put it in his hand. I have 2 mice, one that's not plugged in and one that I use, and I just let him him use that one so he feels like he's involved. But like, if he turns around, he's like, "Fuck professional gamers. I think that's shitty and nerdy." Then that's his choice.
Sure.
Like, obviously he's wrong, and he's probably going to be a more saying that. But like, it's if that's his choice and he goes, "I really want to play," then to me, it's the same kind of odds. Right? Millions of people play games, millions of people play football. Only the less than 1%, probably 0.01%, reach the very top. But if it's something he wants to do and he's passionate for it, then go for that. But I really dislike the whole thing of parents saying, "You should do this, you should study this, you should be." Just let people do what they want to do because otherwise they're not going to be happy.
Yeah, I think
and we will die unhappy and wasting your time.
I think, great. As I said, I think a lot of it is a lack of education, and I think that I'm trying to think of a way I can word this without insulting anyone. I think there's almost an air of ignorance towards gaming where the stigma around it is the nerdy aspect, we're just sitting there pushing buttons and things happen, right? Whereas you and I and most people would know that the advancements in games now require pinpoint accuracy and reaction times of probably martial arts skills. So, with that regard, it's not just pump money into it, you end up with a result. Let's not take the Man City approach. But, again, it requires a lot of education. And again, this is kind of going back to what I said. I really worry that there's just now going to be this influx of parents pushing money into, as you quite rightly said, the wrong areas to nurture the talent that the child may have. And one thing I wanted to bring up was I noticed that on a website that I won't mention, but you can pay for people's services on it, you can pay a certain amount and they give you coaching from an apparent a tutor. But the tutor that I've heard it's ridiculous. It's not something that I would say is of a high quality. And the thing is that obviously parents are looking for this kind of guidance, and because of, like I said, the lack of education, they're being tricked to a certain degree to thinking this is the right route, and obviously the outcome is that the child is not going to get to where it needs to be, and parents are just going to be wasting money, and someone's then manipulating that situation to obviously try and game the system, as it were. Which is
gets me.
Which is why I said there almost needs to be this. Again, I don't know if that's something that you can kind of lead the charge on, or whether a group of people can, where there almost needs to be a re-education around gaming, that it is no longer just sitting in a bedroom and playing things, but it's almost, it is a competitive sport. And I guess now it's slowly starting to change with even big football teams have now bought, players to play FIFA. Who would have thought that a couple of years ago? It's insane to think that.
Exactly. And I think what you were saying there is very true. People do need to kind of take some ownership for it. But I think in terms of what we're talking about with the parent, people like me wouldn't suffice because I wouldn't be able to reach them. You need even a bigger, you need something that can reach people on a national level, right? Because they could just say, well, who are you compared to this guy? Yeah. Where I think in terms of what you're talking about in the coaching is, for me, if I'm looking at someone to coach now, I've seen loads of people go back and 6 to Go have offered coaching and had coaching, and I've seen it be done very successfully. But the easy thing to look at is, first of all, Google the person who says they're going to coach you.
Exactly.
They may have said they've won this many events or been to this level. It's very easy in esports to find all this out. You Wikipedia or Google someone's name and the game they play, you'll find a whole page on that person. So Jordan Nothing from used to be on Cloud9, very successful American Counter-Strike player from 1.6 all the way to now. He did a lot of coaching. I think he still does coaching now, maybe. I hope I'm right still on that anyway. But for him, he has won some of the biggest events in Counter-Strike and CSGO. He is someone who has played this game for multiple years. You Google his name once and you go, he's offering coaching. Yeah, that's someone I'll take some coaching from, yeah. Exactly. But then you hear this guy called Joe Blogs down the road, for example, and
Redding's finest.
He's won 16 events and traveled all over the world, but then you Google his name and nothing comes up, then you should probably take the warning sign at that point. And I think that's something that parents would obviously struggle to in comparison. You'd hope maybe their kids are well enough informed to say, oh, well, he's not actually a good player.
I mean, I guess it's one of those things. I mean, I was just thinking ahead here where, again, to use football as a guide. I mean, obviously, you kind of have your academies and stuff like that. I mean, I know Reading's got a very very good academy. Whereas, the youth go in, and obviously the academy is there to do the job. So, maybe it isn't relying on people like yourself to do it, but maybe it's the game developers themselves. Maybe they should be the ones setting up a gaming academy and stuff like that. But which is obviously a massive investment on their part. But then again, if we end up with situations like we did with Fortnite, then maybe that investment is worth it. But I guess I'm looking at it because Man City signed an eSports player for their club, and I guess I don't know what the setup is. It's probably partly my ignorance of not looking into it that in depth, but it'd be interesting to see what that setup is. Is it just a case of you play for Man City but you're home based and you're expected to do stuff yourself, or have they actually got some sort of eSports investment? It'd be really interesting to look into, actually.
I don't know the football industry, but I know that organizations like Fnatic, that's just one that comes to mind, but there's multiple of them. Gambit, Navi have done it as well. They've had youngster or academy teams, and usually it's not in every game, but it'll be main games like, say, League of Legends or Counter-Strike, two very big titles, and they'll have these academy teams so that they can be fillers. At one point, and I am not very good at MOBAs, I don't have the full understanding, but I think Fnatic basically, they had a team who was already in the League of Legends European kind of the overall system, and their academy team then qualified also to be in the same one.
Wow!
But by the rules, they can't have both teams in there, so they sold the academy team.
Oh wow!
And the academy team quickly bought up and then used to, effectively like that under a different organization. That is the perfect example that you're an organization that already knows it works. You've obviously got an eye for talent. So if you can find another team and then it can do well, and that can become a profitable business, or it can become a filler team. And when I say filler team, say they see one player who's really good in the academy team, and he can actually outshine the players who are on the main team. Well, then give him a shot, let him try it out. And then you can literally swap roles. So you move one player from the main team down to the academy and one from the academy to the main team.
Exactly.
There's great potential in something like that. And I think that's a real positive to take on it. But at the same time, nobody wants to be the filler, right?
No,
but
exactly.
You serve a purpose. You serve a role in that sense. And again, it's just another way of getting an opportunity.
No, and I think as I said, we'll probably close on this, but yeah, I think it will be really interesting to see whether it's the game developers or whether, as you said, whether it's these kind of clans and groups who are then going to start leading the charge by developing their own youth development stages, because obviously with the amount of money that's now being poured in, or maybe we're going to start to see the two kind of crossing over. I mean, one that I can think of right now was Team Dignitas that got bought by
Yeah.
a baseball team in the US, I think, if I remember rightly.
Cause I know Odie really well.
Yeah, I know him as
60,
well.
79,
Yeah, I know Odie really well as
man.
well. But yeah, I mean
Look.
that's a perfect example.
Yeah, 76ers.
76ers,
The
yeah.
acquisition of Dignitas.
Yeah, I mean,
Philadelphia.
I definitely did not see that coming at all. But that just shows that somebody there has clearly gone way ahead into the future and gone, there's something in this. We need to jump on this ASAP. And now, obviously, they're the leader in that particular industry of what they're in now. They're way ahead of everyone else. So I think that's partly why, especially in this country, you can see a lot of football teams are now starting to invest in the gaming scene. Obviously, FIFA is massively huge, so it totally makes sense for things like the International World Cup. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see who else is going to join the kind of the chalice of bringing in esports players. Are we going to start seeing British gas teams, stuff like that? It could be hilarious just to see who else joins the.
Whoever's at the forefront is going to benefit.
Exactly.
All these companies that are sitting on their old style of marketing are quickly realizing that TV's not working out as much. The younger generation, if you think like I'm 29 now, I'll be 30 next year. My generation is who they're marketing to more and more now. But I literally don't read the news because it's negative and I don't like it. Like I don't watch the news. I don't do any stuff. I don't read or watch TV stuff. I focus on online media. It's where I spend my time. And obviously a lot of that is on gaming because of what I do, but I obviously enjoy it. And the younger the generations are, like my little brother's 15, my son is 3. They're all going to be more deeper into gaming than what we are because it's more naturally accepted.
Correct, yeah.
And on another point away from that, which is something I've spoken about very openly, companies like BBC, they need to fuck. They're not going to do it properly because they're just wasting everyone's time and wasting their own money because they are so anti-gaming and esports because they're so old and clueless to what it actually all is.
Exactly.
They sit there and believe that there's some extra power that if we come and do it, we're going to be the best. We had there was a story told about I think one of them was asking MBK what he ate for breakfast before his game. That literally has no impact on anything. Why are you asking these dumb questions? Like with all the money they have, right? And they're bringing like in 4 cameras and all fancy and all this stuff just to film a basic interview. As you and me know, you can have an interview like this in a podcast style and people are still going to watch it if the content's good. No one cares what he had for breakfast. But because
exactly,
the BBC refused to actually hire people, like they could go and get someone like you, for example, or someone who's making content on that specific game and hire them as a freelancer or even hire them full time if they really want to invest in it and get good content, and then we might respect you. Like literally, I anytime I can take shitty companies like BBC, I'm just destroying them. Because they do nothing harm our industry because they don't understand it and because they're scared of dying out to stuff like esports.
Yeah. What's quite interesting is I think the BBC quite recently have started their own I think it's their own podcast type thing on Twitch, if I remember rightly. And it's interesting to see because they haven't gone down the corporate route. I think they've literally invested like a couple of the DJs that they've actually got internally who have an interest in gaming. And they have a variety of guests on and stuff like that, which is it's interesting to see. But I don't know how far they can go with it because. I mean, not saying that I have an extensive knowledge, not that I have an extensive knowledge of gaming, but I mean, I've got, but I obviously can handle a conversation with regards to with esports and kind of my knowledge of retro, and obviously I've been previously in esports and kind of around, but when you're dealing with the average person, obviously you're dealing with gaming. As we know, casual gaming is the biggest market, but esports, like we've said, is such a huge thing now that's just accelerating at a crazy rate. But it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do with that. Whether they keep it casual, whether they're going to try and push it into like a corporate type thing, because that's the BBC, is what they do, unfortunately. But it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, actually.
So I had an article that BBC, and again it was just slander and them being stupid. But they took a tweet of mine where I said about mixed teams, and they said that I didn't want women and men playing together. and because they're so misinformed and stupid, they took mixed teams as like I was talking about male and female, where mixed teams is if like me and you put
That's
together a
right,
team.
yeah.
We're not a real team, we're a mixed team. And I said the mixed teams should not be able to attend the biggest events in the world, which makes perfect sense because mixed teams are not what you want to see facing
That's
against
right. Exactly.
They might make a one-win upset or something like that, but yeah. And like I've seen, we saw articles where they were just saying how gaming again is like the gateway to being in your room and not going out and not socializing and stuff. So if media can improve on that, I'm happy. But I honestly think esports and gaming in general is better without those kind of medias, because we have been self-sufficient and done so well ourselves. And people used to say for years, right, especially in the early days, 2003, 4, 5, everyone was like, get on TV. Yeah, that's the next big thing. Now we have Twitch. Now we have YouTube. Now we have Mixer. Now we have all these other platforms, right? And all of them can do our needs plus more, because you cannot get the Twitch experience anywhere else, right? You cannot get that to be put and compare it to something on TV.
Correct.
Like I can have a group of friends all in chat and we can be watching the same thing. I've been on Discord servers before where we're all watching the same stream and we're still listening to that person, but then we're having our own based off of what's being happened there. You cannot do that with normal TV.
No, I agree.
It doesn't work in the same way.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, historically, I mean, you know, as you said, it's. I mean, I've mentioned this previously, where, I mean, you briefly touched on it a moment ago, where gaming was kind of more of a community thing, where it would be one console, everyone would bundle together, or even LAN parties years ago. It would be everyone bringing their machines into one big room, and I guess now,
just saying that they'll bring your PCs, right? That is what so many gamers now will never experience. That was called hell.
Yes,
that was called lugging a machine that was not only expensive, but I had a CRT monitor. Those CRT monitors weighed a ton. I was like 14, didn't have a car, so I can't drive at that age. You're taking public transport and trains just to go and compete. Nowadays, you go to these events and they've already got PCs and everything set up there.
Yeah.
But if you ever can, this is my biggest advice to anyone, go and experience that LAN environment with friends. My first iSeries, I was awake for 72 hours with like hardly any sleep, just playing. But it was so fun. And yeah, just so I know I took you off what you were saying, but LANs is 100% something. It's that kind of bring your own computer LAN, that experience it, honestly, you won't regret it.
And that's the thing, is I think some of that is missed where, yeah, I mean, I kind of do a lot of retro gaming and stuff like that, and I remember, especially in the fighting game community, and it's probably one of the only communities where I think that's still valid, where everybody will still bundle around one machine. I mean, I think I saw a video of, I think it was Porkchop, was in his hotel room at Evo with one laptop, and there was like 15 people queuing up to play, and I was like, this is mental stuff. But it was that kind of got me thinking, because I was like, people still do that even till today with modern technology.
Even at CPT, so we were at CPT, it was the EU regionals that I was hosting for Street Fighter, and the whole event's finished. And when you finish an event in Counter-Strike or whatever, there's an after party or something like that, we took over the whole hotel lobby. Anyone that had a laptop, started up Steam, had it, plug in 5 sticks in. You could bring an extra screen that you had. So some of these guys are traveling with screens. Others have those like mini screens. You've seen like the fold out flip ones. And everyone's just plugging in. The whole hotel lobby, the bar, they were loving us because obviously we're still getting some drinks. We're also ordering food, but everyone's just playing. And I mean, you're watching people like Problem X, who won Evo, not this year, but last year, one of the best players in the world. He's playing up against players who, with no offense to them, they're very good and very talented because it takes a lot of skill. They're not even looking at Evo as an option, but everyone's together, everyone's around there, everyone's asking questions. Like that is such a unique experience still, and I love it because that's the hardcore in us. It's the any chance we can play, we will.
I think that's the thing, is that, you know, I mean, for anyone who's still in chat, I mean, if you haven't gone to an event, whether you're competing or not, try and attend something. I mean, I think Gfinity will probably be starting up again soon. I think they offer free tickets. I mean, it's not a big event, but it's still something to get an example of of how it all works, what goes on behind the scenes, and kind of the competitive nature. But yeah, I mean, seeing someone set up a laptop in their hotel room and have like loads of people there, I mean, it killed me laughing that even in this day that culture still exists, where Whereas
Yeah.
before it would be sticking your pound coins on the side of an arcade machine and then queuing up, and now like people are just doing that but in a hotel room. It's just absolutely hilarious still to see till this day. But yeah, LAN parties. I mean, I've been to a few of those before, and yeah, I feel that pain. As soon as you said carrying CRTs, I was like, nah, I'll pass on that.
When we
Mate.
used to do it as friends, like for a weekend, you go to someone's house, whoever's parents let them, and you're all trying to bring them in over and over again, and you're trying to just make room, find space on tables or whatever. It wasn't optimal. The desks obviously weren't all even or anything like that, but you were just there to have fun and get involved.
Yeah, that's good.
Magical moments.
Exactly, and I think that's the thing, is that it's nice to preserve some of those moments, and I think that's probably one of the things that's now maybe being lost, is that the kind of the thing of going to some of these LAN parties where kind of the the rough nature of having Ethernet cables running over everywhere and cables everywhere, and the chaos of it, and whereas now you kind of look on TV and it's all nicely folded and it's all been tie wrapped and trunking's been put in. I'm like, come on, that's not a LAN. Come on, let's rip the cables out and have a laugh. That's what it's about. Let's give me a rollerball mouse that's got some fluff in it, and I'm gonna have to take the ball out halfway through a fight and quickly fix and put it back in. Like that's the days
I want to do an epic LAN again. I've worked and commentated, hosted some of their events, and like iSeries is amazing, right? It's still the base, but it's very commercial now, and there's still competition, still events, but it's like got the streamer bits, the influencer bits, and all these other parts, and it's become a different beast. But Epic LAN, you can still go there and turn up with 5 friends and just drink all night and play games.
That's pretty
like if that's what you want to do for a weekend, right? I am so down if I'm ever around with an Epic LAN.
We may have
to say to some people and be like, "Let's go,
we may have to do that, James. I may have to hold you to that one. So there we
hey,
go.
I am seriously down, because it's such a change, right, than working an event to go there and actually go and enjoy it.
No, absolutely.
I can't remember the last event I went to where I can
just relax,
walk around myself and just chill. Like, it was a Gamescom a few years ago where I realized that I can no longer just walk around and go and enjoy it. And not because like I'm super famous or anything, but because I'm looking at things in a different way. Like I'm walking around, and first of all, people occasionally ask for like pictures or autographs, stuff like that. No at all. But I couldn't just sit there and take it all in, because I was looking around and I'm seeing things and I'm thinking about, oh, what's going on here? What's happening there? I couldn't kind of take the natural enjoyment. So I'd love if I can go back to an Epic LAN, be around all just the normal UK people, play some games, have some beers, and go to sleep.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's, as I said, it's one of those things that I think in modern gaming is probably slowly being lost, where kind of the nostalgia parts of, like I said, is just bundling in a room, setting things up and stuff like that. And I think the only real scene that I can see that's probably still got there, as I said, is probably the fighting game community, where that's still really strong. But no, it's good. It's good to hear that you've been through your battles of LAN parties before, because I think if anyone hasn't been through that,
I think that was a rite of package for us as older guys when it comes to.
Exactly, yeah, it certainly was. Right, well, I think that's probably going to be a good stopping point. So what I normally do is then offer the floor back to you to tell us about anything upcoming you've got coming, or any content or anything like that. So I will hand it back to you temporarily.
Well, we got the CSGO major starting. It is the first time I have ever worked on a major. I've been very lucky with Starlight. Kind of almost, it's weird to say it, like had me as like the face of it, because I'm doing all the content and the stuff around the major, the interviews and things like that. So that's what I'm here in Berlin for. That's going to be awesome. And then I'm back on the PUBG grind. As I said, I'm away for 3 months, but it's been a lot of fun. And if anyone watching, or anyone who's tuning in on the VOD, wherever it may be, you got any questions, or you've got any extra, I don't know, you've got something you want to say, or you've got a response to anything I've said, hit me up. I try and respond to absolutely everyone. I generally do respond to everyone. It may just take me a little bit of time to answer in the message request.
He does.
That is what I focus on.
No,
I will get to it.
I can vouch for that, and I've actually just put James's details actually in the chat of Twitch at the moment. And if you are watching this on demand, it will be available in the description section, or it will be in the top comment section or the description of the video on YouTube, depending on how I put it together. But it will be available. It'll all be there. So, but no, I think that's a good point to probably end the stream there. So, James, thank you very much, sir. You are an absolute
legend. Let me do one more thing.
Oh, go on then. Go on then.
My webcam's still up. I'm just going to show everyone, because you've seen that this is in the hotel room.
Oh, here we go. You're going to like this. You're going to like this.
Streamer light.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that Razer light thing. So let me just turn this around.
Look at this bad boy.
This is the natural lighting I have in the hotel room. It's so wild.
No.
Look, like laptop, microphone, mouse, like hanging off the edge of the desk. There you go. That's how you have to.
No expense spared on Mean Machine Talks. You see the level of commitment my guests go to. You see that he's abroad. He phones in and he got things working. That's the important thing. But no, thank you very much, James. I really, really appreciate all the time, and it's been fantastic. I can't believe we've been going for over 2 hours. So I honestly,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been crazy to think it's gone that long. But no, thank you very much. Stay on the line, and I will speak to you shortly. But for everyone else who's joined live, thank you very much. I've seen a few new people who haven't seen it before. So again, thank you very much for joining me. James has been a fantastic guest.
Press follow.
I was just about to come to that. And if you would like and have enjoyed the content you have seen so far, please feel free to drop me a follow. I normally stream retro and VR and a variety of other crazy things, as well as doing these podcasts as well. So, but again, a big thank you to James, and a big thank you for giving me your time as well, and for everyone else who's joined, who has followed, hosted the actual stream, and I got a follow from you, James. That's something. I might have to screenshot that and put that on the wall somewhere of the wall of famous people to go on the wall. But I'm only kidding. Right. Anyway, thank you very much, James. Stay on the line, and I will finish the stream up. But anyway, MeanMachineDean is signing out. Have a great afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I will say good night. Good night.